So, good morning, Vodafone. Welcome to yoga. Those of you who are live, and at the moment, I think that's just me, it is 18 minutes past 7. So, there are 12 minutes until the start of class proper. If you're geared to get, or if you're watching on the replay, you can fast forward by 12 minutes for approximately the start of class. So it's 18 minutes past 7 after what might have been one of the hottest nights in Britain ever. So if, like me, you feel that you've hardly slept and the rain has hardly refreshed us, and even though I got up at 6, it was already 20 degrees, which would be fantastic if we were on holiday. It is fantastic, but if you've got to work today and you're already struggling with the heat, make sure you take on plenty of water before your practice and throughout your day. Good morning. If you've just joined, there's still 5 minutes to the start of class. It's 7:24 on the 13th of August. It's been a hot night, so I wouldn't be surprised if some of you are going to be joining me later in the day rather than live. If you are, then there's still 5 minutes till the start of class. So on Tuesday, we did quite a lot of postures where we focused on closing the hip, including some focus on Warrior 3. So today we're going to open the hips, having worked on closing the hips on Tuesday. And also it's an advantage of working in the heat. Where I am, I don't know about you, it's already really hot. So that's a good opportunity to do some deep stretches, making sure that we warm up properly first so that we don't hurt ourselves by overstretching. So that's what we'll do today. We are going to include floating half moon, Ardha Chandrasana, in our sequence. So I keep looking over here. So if you've got a block, have it handy to the top of your mat if you like to use a block for Ardha Chandrasana. Personally, I'm not particularly keen on that because what I find is that when people use a block, they lean on the block or become dependent on the block, and then it's quite difficult to leave the block. But we all find our way into the pose in different ways. So I prefer, if I'm practicing Ardha Chandrasana, if I need support, I'd rather put my lifted leg against a wall. So I might demonstrate that to you in a moment. But there are lots of ways of doing things. So you will know from your own practice, if you've done this pose before, which one works for you. Some people just like the psychological help of having a block there, knowing it's there, knowing that you can float down to it if you need to. If you haven't got a block, you can always float your hand to the floor or never take your hand off the floor. That's also fine, even if you have to bend your knee deeply to get your hand to the floor. But I'll show you all that as we go through. As always, if you've got any comments, you can put them in the chat box or you can send them to me directly or send them through whoever your contact is at Vodafone or Nuffield and ask them to pass them on to me if you don't have my details. My name's Isobel Collier. I've got, I'm on Facebook. I've also got a blog post, a yoga blog post. If you want to have a look at that, it just contains some of my thoughts. I update it only about once a month, so it's not a massive amount. But if you're interested in my yoga journey, or some of the reflections that I have on some of the stuff I'm reading, you might find a few snippets there. These sessions have been running since the beginning of June, twice a week. Before that, we did daily sessions for Mental Health Awareness Week. So if you've been with me since the start of that, thank you for staying with it. Those of you who were my regulars at Vodafone HQ before lockdown, thank you for staying with it too. And anyone who's joined more recently, welcome, and do put any questions in the chat box if there's anything you need help with. I believe from September, your membership will entitle you to just go along to your local club. I'm not quite sure what's happening. I will check and let you know next week. Next week is my last week for now of doing these live sessions. Because the week after I'm taking a break and September is a whole new world. So as we live with and adapt to uncertainty, we've just got to be flexible in body and mind. And that's where yoga can be really helpful. So welcome, good morning. We're going to start in a couple of minutes. So set yourself up on your mat. Make sure you've got a non-slip surface. As I've explained before, this mat is rather too spongy for balances, but I find that I like the extra depth because this floor is incredibly hard and my knees are a bit bony. So find what works for you, not too soft, not too thin. Baby bear's porridge of a mat. to suit your body. And other than that, you might need a block. Don't think we need a strap today, but if you're in the habit of using one for any of the poses, have one to hand. And just take these few moments to focus on your breath. So sitting in any seated or kneeling position, you can have your back against the wall if you struggle to sit upright, if you've got any issues with your lower back and you need that support. And upright looks different from person to person. So if you struggle to sit with a straight spine, it's work in progress. Some people have more natural curvature in their spine than others. And some of us just have a lot of postural habits to overcome in order to sit up straight. But it may help you to think about lifting the crown of your head gently away from your tailbone, so you're creating the idea of space between the vertebrae, so floating the head up so it feels less heavy on the spine. May help you to draw your chest slightly forward and your shoulder blades slightly back. Make sure you're drawing the shoulders down away from the ears. Have your fingers lightly on the mat or rest them on your knees. Bring your attention to your breath. So why do I always start the class with breathing? Because not only does a focus on the breath help to calm the mind, but the breath acts as a bellwether, if you like, for how you're feeling. By connecting with your breath, you can really connect with how you are, where you are. So draw your breath in long, deep threads and exhale fully through the nose. And as you observe the breath, as you learn to pay attention to the breath, to watch it really carefully, you'll notice where it hesitates or gets stuck, where it doesn't seem to flow. And we're really going for flow here. Even, slow, complete breaths. And just taking a few of these deep breaths, particularly the deep exhalations, will help to calm your mind. So in any situation, if you find yourself in a traffic jam late for a meeting, those are the days, or if you find yourself getting wound up because your tech doesn't work or your internet signal suddenly falls over or you can't enter the Zoom room or whatever, try and remember to breathe. These will be the times when your breath will become short, and that will only add to your stress. So deep breathing really does reduce stress. Take a couple more breaths here. Inhaling and exhaling. So before we come over onto all fours to begin our stretches, we're just going to do a toe stretch. I think we've done this once before, you may remember it. We're going to take the fingers of the right hand and we're going to thread them in between the toes. You might have to look at your feet to do this so that you don't miss out any toes. It's quite an odd one. If it doesn't suit you, if you've got issues with your toes, and just clasp the foot with your right hand. Otherwise, you're trying to thread your fingers through your toes. Find your other foot with your other hand and do the same. So we're gently opening out the toes, giving them a little bit of a stretch. When you've got hold of your toes, lengthen your body again. Find that length, and if you can, hinge from the hips and start to come forward, still separating out your toes if you can. So if you don't like this, you can omit the forward fold, or you can just clasp your feet without separating out the toes. We're not here for very long. Utthita Anguli Sukhasana. Come back up again, cross the feet so the other foot's in front. Take your left foot, left hand, thread your fingers through your right toes and then do the same on the other side. You might find one side harder than the other. Or you might find them both equally difficult. So draw your toes back. Your knees won't go down to the ground now because your feet and hands are in the way. Or they might do if you're really super, super flexible. Inhale here, lift and lengthen the hinge at the hips, drawing the crown away from the tailbone, trying to keep your back flat as you draw your chest down towards your shins. Tuck the chin in if you can. Use your deep exhalation to overcome any reservations you have about this pose. And then inhale, draw the tailbone back to the ground if it's lifted. Lift your spine, release your fingers, release your toes. We're coming over onto all fours now. Actually, before we do that, we're going to sit in Vajrasana or Thunderbolt pose. I'll show you from the side. You can sit how you like, obviously. Sitting on the heels and sitting upright so the spine is long. So for some people who find cross-legged really uncomfortable, this is a good meditation pose. If your feet go to sleep or if you don't like feeling that weight on your feet, you can always put a roll blanket underneath your buttocks here. Lift your sternum, draw your shoulder blades away from your ears and lengthen your spine. Just take a couple of deep breaths here while you settle into the position. Next time you inhale, float your arms up to the ceiling. Draw your shoulders away from your ears, lengthen from the fingertips down towards the feet. Inhale, and as you exhale, draw your belly button to your spine and see if you can bring your chest down in a straight line. When you get to the position where you don't think you can hold it any longer, just allow your fingertips to fall to the floor. Inhale here, press into your fingertips, draw your buttocks back to your heels, and maybe your brow will come to the ground. Inhale, draw back up again. That's much harder. Really have to engage the stomach muscle here to draw you back up. If that's too much, then instead of lengthening the arms, you can bring them to your hips and just work on hinging at the hips. Otherwise, we're going to go one more time with the arms extended. So this is quite tough, but your breath will really help. Moving on an exhalation. Inhale at the bottom, or rather at the floor, and exhale to come up. You might find it helpful to use your Ujjayi breath. Inhale at the top and come down. We're going to stay down this time. Stretch your fingertips away, so we're in child's pose, and then draw your hands around to your heels. From here, you're going to roll up onto the crown of your head and lift your buttocks. You may want to adjust your knees here so that you're balancing on the crown of your head, but you've still got weight on your knees and on your feet and on your hands. To advance the pose, tuck your toes, reach for your heels and draw in a little closer so that you're right on that sort of wall at the top of your head from which your hair all fans out. So this is hair pose, Shashankasana, hair in the lap pose, sometimes called moon pose. So why are we doing this? Well, it's giving you, believe it or not, all the benefits of an inversion. It's like a headstand, but you're not getting any of the risks or some of the challenges involved with that pose. Opening up the back of the neck here, balancing on the crown. As I say, maybe you can reach the heels, maybe not. Or you can keep your arms softly on the floor, backs of the hands to the floor. Take a few deep breaths here. Inhaling, exhaling deeply. And then roll back into child's pose. Take a couple more breaths here. Inhale and come up onto all fours. Set up your box position with your wrists under your shoulders and your knees under your hips. Weight evenly between both sides of the body. Inhale, and as you exhale, round the back and come into cat pose, drawing the belly button to the spine, dropping the tailbone down, looking towards the thighs. Inhale, come into cow pose. Lift the chest, draw the shoulders away from the ears, draw the sternum through the shoulder blades very slightly. Exhale to round, and inhale to draw through. Keep going with that. Exhaling as you round. Inhaling as you draw through. Exhale to round. And sit back on your heels in extended child's pose. Inhale, come forward. Come forward a little bit further this time, so you're loading up the forearms and the shoulders a little bit as you take your weight over your wrists. And then we're going to swing over gently to the left, send your buttocks out to the left, come back onto your heels. Then we're coming forward along the right side of the body until we come back into that position where our weight's slightly over the wrist. So if this is too much for your wrist, don't go so far. You can make these circles bigger if your hips are warm or starting to warm. If you've got issues with your hips or with your knees or with your shoulders or your wrists, you can make the circles smaller. So the further you come forward, the more you're loading. Don't like that, don't do it. If you are loading, make sure your inner fingers are staying down. I'll do one more of these. Coming forward, and then we'll change direction. Warming through the hips, warming through the shoulders, warming through the knees. Starting to load the wrists. So on Tuesday, we didn't do any sun salutations, so we didn't do any loading of the wrists, any loading of the arms. So we've got that coming now, just a little bit. Next time you come forward, we'll make this the last one. Sit back on your heels. Inhale to come forward into your box position. Float your right arm up to the ceiling. Follow it with your eye gaze if you can. Exhale into Parsva Balasana. Take the right hand underneath the left armpit. Maybe bring your ear and shoulder to the floor. Look up to the left if you can. If you want to take the bind, the left hand comes up, comes behind the body, back of the hand to the buttock, or maybe your fingertips can find your inner thigh. Keep lifting and lengthening, drawing that left shoulder back and looking up if you can. Inhale to release the bind. Exhale, press your left hand into the mat. Release your right hand and sit back on your heels. We'll do that on the left. Inhale to come forward. Take your left fingertips up to the ceiling. Exhale as you draw your left hand under your right armpit. Back of the hand faces the mat. Ear, shoulder maybe come down. So this may be enough. You can stay here. You can lift, you can drop, or you can bind. Looking over the shoulder at the ceiling if you want a really deep twist that's quite strong in the upper back. Make sure you're still breathing deeply. Inhale, float up. Exhale, press down, release, and sit back on your heels. Have a stretch. Inhale, come to all fours, cross your feet at the ankles, roll back over your ankles and come to seated. Stretching the arms away from you and legs away from you. Told you I didn't sleep. And coming into Dandasana. So flex the feet actively. Draw the shoulders back, lift the chest, find the space in the body. We're going to draw the right leg in and we're coming into baby cradle. So for this pose, you want to take the right leg across the left thigh here. That might be enough for you. Or you can take your hands in an underhand grip underneath your shin and start to draw that shin up towards your chest. Watch that you're not leaning back here if you can possibly help it. And then we're just going to rock the hip from side to side. So opening the hip in contrast to what we were doing earlier in the week. If you want to advance the pose, you can take the foot into the crook of your left elbow, take your other arm around the outside and take an overhand grip and work here. Or if you're doing this, you want to make sure that your pinky toe is really drawing back towards your knee and you're not pulling on the ankle. That's not good. So really flex the foot to protect the knee and the ankle. And if you want to, see if you can take that foot a little bit higher. Do what feels right for you. And then from here, draw that right heel into your left hip crease. And if you want to take Ardha Baddha Paschimottanasana, then from here, you inhale, you lift your right arm, you take it behind you, and you take hold of the toes if you can reach them, and then you fold forward over your left leg. If that's too much on your right knee, don't even think about it. Come into Janu Shirsasana. So the right foot comes to the left inner thigh, and we fold. So this is our final deep hip stretch before we come into our sequence, which will include some hip opening to the side rather than the hip closing we were doing on Tuesday. Take a couple of really deep breaths here, lengthening the crown towards the foot, the brow towards the shin, the chest towards the thigh, or wherever it comes to. Press your fingertips into the mat, gently unfold your folded knee or release the bind if you're in Ardha Baddha Paschimottanasana. Stretch out that right leg, draw the left leg in and we'll go on the other side. So find your length here again, extending the spine as much as you're able to, perching up on your seated bones as much as you're able to. Everyone's different. Take the foot across the right thigh. Again, you can hold on underneath the shin. If that causes you to fold back, then maybe leave your foot here, or you can place your lower back against a wall. Same range of options. You can lift here. You can bring the sole of the foot to the elbow and take the other arm round the outside. Helps if you've got long arms. So here we should feel quite a strong stretch in the outer thigh and the outer buttock. Inhale as you draw your chest towards your thigh, and maybe you can get that foot a little bit higher. Again, you want to really watch that this toe draws back towards the knee. That's going to stop you from pulling on the ankle, which is not good. From here, your options are Janu Shirsasana, which we just did on the other side, or bringing this heel right into your hip crease, taking your left hand up and over, reaching forward and round. So left hand comes to left foot. That frees up your right hand. If you want to take it, you can take a strap if you've got one. And then we're coming towards a forward fold here. So again, your option is to take this foot to your left, your right inner thigh. Use the breath. So if you're in this half lotus fold, you won't be able to come quite so deep because your foot's actually in the way. It's my excuse. Not that we need excuses. You do what you do in yoga. We don't judge, we don't compare, we don't compete. No two people look the same. Someone's journey is unknown to us. Most of their struggles are hidden from us. And we've got enough to do sorting out our own. We need to take the plank out of our own eye before we can look to help others. Pushing your fingertips into the ground, gently come up, gently release that leg. Just point and flex the feet. Sometimes it helps if the knees are a bit sticky. And then we're coming up to standing any way you can at the front of your mat with your block handy if you think you might use it for Ardha Chandrasana. So take Tadasana at the front of your mat. Draw your crown away from the ground. Press your heels down. Press the balls of your feet down and lift your toes. Spread your toes out. Draw them into the ground one at a time. Do that again. Lifting and lengthening and drawing down. We bend the knees deeply. We inhale. We take the arms up and over. We press the palms together. Urdhva Hastasana. Exhale, Uttanasana. Relax the head and neck here. You'll see me holding my head. It's only because of my microphone and my earpiece. So make sure if you can, you release your head and neck totally at this point. Press your hands into the mat, bend the knees deeply, take your right leg back into a low lunge, Power through your back heel, lighten your fingertips. Draw your chest forward, square off the hips here. So you really want to pull this hip down. That's going to square off the hips. Now we're going to open the hips as we take the right foot to the floor. We take the arms up and over, and we're in warrior two. Inhale and exhale in your warrior two. So adjust your feet as necessary. Heel to heel or heel to arch alignment, depending on your hips. Tuck your tailbone under. Bend deeply into that knee. Try and get your shoulders over your hips if you can. Try and get your arms level and look down your front fingers. Inhale, flip the front palm. Vipariti Virabhadrasana. We've done this lots of times. Stay low in the hips, open up the left side of the body. Exhale, extended side angle, keeping the hips low and the fingertips light or the elbow light on that front leg. Here we are, extended side angle. Inhale, Trikonasana, your triangle, opening both arms, pressing the back of that hand to the inner thigh. Find space here, lift and length. Here comes our floating half moon. Bend the front knee, float the back leg in. You can take several hops if you need to. Find your block if you need it, or take your eye gaze down your thumb. Stack your hips that have the back foot flexed and press into the heel. Don't worry about the alarming noise, it's just my hip poking. So your alternative here is to put your foot on the wall and then turn your standing leg out, turn your lifted leg down. Now, by powering through this heel here, I find the balance I need to really go deeper into the pose. I prefer that to using a block, because now I know I've got support and I can play around with alignment without needing that block. So wherever you are, whether you're using the block or not, we've probably been here long enough, float back into warrior two, inhale and exhale in your warrior two. Inhale, take the arm up and over, lift the back heel. We're in lunge. Go through your vinyasa. Press into the hands. Left foot comes back. We retain the breath in Kumbhakasana, plank pose. Exhale, knees, chest, chin, come to the floor. Keeping the buttocks high. Keep the elbows in close as you slide forward into your Bhujangasana. Wrap your shoulders back and down, chin tucks. Tuck the toes. We're coming up into downward facing dog. Take a couple of extra breaths here. Inhale and exhale as you send your hips up, your heels down, your chest towards your thighs. Inhale again, bring your right leg to the front of your mat in a lunge, help it if you need to. And then exhale to bring your left foot in. Inhale, up and over. Exhale, hands to your heart center. Let's do all that on the left. Inhale, arms up and over. Exhale, deep forward fold. Let your head and neck release here. Slight knee bend if you find this pose difficult. Inhale, press your hands into the floor and take your left foot back into a lunge. Square off the hip here. Know the difference between a squared hip and an open hip. We're coming into warrior two. So take the arms up and over, adjust your feet as is necessary. Set your pose up, really open your hips here. Challenge of warrior two is to open your hips to the long side of your mat without your knee rolling in. So keep opening the thigh bone there, drawing it out and down to the side, keeping your hips open here. Trying to get that front knee parallel to the mat if you can, without leaning forward. So keep the shoulders over the hips and go deeper if you can. Inhale, Vipariti Virabhadrasana. We know where we're going with this, I think. Exhale, Utthita Parsvakonasana. Stretching fingertips away from the blade of the back foot. Inhale, Trikonasana. Set it up. Open, 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 open. Lengthen the spine as much as you can. And now we're coming into our floating half moon. So you might need to hop a few times. You might need a block here. You might want to hold onto the wall if it's there. Use your breath. And if you're near enough to the wall to press your back heel into the wall, you can also do that. Wherever you are, find your ekagrata. Find your single pointed focus to calm the mind. When you're ready, on an inhalation, hop back into Warrior Two. Inhale and exhale into your Warrior Two. Inhale, back arm comes up and over, frames the front foot, lift the back heel. Kumbhakasana, retain the breath. Exhale, knees, chest, chin, or if you want to, and it's in your practice, you can do chaturanga, coming down with a straight back, bending at the elbows and scooping forward and up into your upward dog. If you're in upward dog, tuck your tailbone under. Don't load in your lower back. Exhale, downward facing dog. And we're going to stay in downward facing dog for a couple of breaths. And instead of coming to the front of the mat, we've got one more move. But if you've had enough, take a break in child's pose. Otherwise, inhale, three-legged dog. Lift your heel high to the ceiling. Press your left heel into the mat. Exhale, knee to chest and hover. Now take your right leg underneath your left armpit, pivot on your back foot, and come into fallen triangle. Opening the chest, lifting the heart. Inhale, release. Bring that knee to the chest. Exhale, downward dog. Inhale, left leg high, right heel down. Exhale, knee to chest, coming forward. Bring your weight forward, shoulders over wrists. Now take your left foot underneath your right armpit. Pivot on that back foot. Lift and lengthen to the sky. Inhale, arms up and over, knee to chest. Exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale to all fours, exhale, child's pose. Take a break. Take some deep breaths here in your child's pose. Stay here for as long as you need to. And from child's pose, we're going to come forward onto all fours, cross the feet at the ankles, come over into seated, or work your way down into Shavasana any way that you can. Hugging your knees into your chest when you get there. Releasing off those hips. Taking your hands to the outside of your feet and drawing your knees into your armpits for one final hip stretch, if that feels good. Happy baby. Bring the feet together. Stay in semi-supine if your back's at all twingy. Bringing your knees together and taking your feet wider. That's going to be nice on your lower back after all those hip stretches. Or if your back's fine, stretch your legs away one at a time. Let your feet flop out to the sides. Let your hips soften out to the sides. Release your hands to the sides, palms face the ceiling. And focus in on your breath. So we went quite quickly through that sequence today. So if you are new, I do apologize. Go back, if you will, and look at some of the earlier videos, particularly those ones posted at the end of May, beginning of June. They're a little bit slower. They take things in a little bit more detail, so that will give you a chance to catch up if it was a bit fast, or to plug any gaps. Anything I missed out today might be there. So wherever you are, focusing on the breath. Remember, any point today or any day when things get tough, and things are very tough for a lot of us at the moment, come back to your breath. Meditation is not just a luxury for people who can afford 2 weeks on a beach in Bali. It's not just for retreats in the Himalayas, although that would be beautiful. Meditation is going to get you out of a hole. It's really helpful if you're in a queue, in a traffic jam, if you're being yelled at by your kids or your parents or both. Focusing in on the breath calms the mind. Focusing on that life force, that prana which all living beings have in common, that air which we all breathe. And we focus on our essentials, on our life force, on what we have, what we really value. That helps us to let go of what really doesn't matter. And a lot of what gives us stress, a lot of what winds us up, though not all of it by any means, is stuff that doesn't really matter. In a few years' time, if we're vouchsafed a little more life on this planet, we won't even remember what got us so aggravated. So I hope you'll approach your day in calm, with calm joy and a peaceful equilibrium. If you're able to take a few more minutes in Shavasana, your day will be greatly enriched by it. And I hope to see you. I won't see you, that's daft. I hope that you will be with me on Tuesday and Thursday of next week for our final online sessions. Thank you for your patience and for your company. Namaste.